Fantastic. Good evening and welcome to the Reveille Times presidential debate. I am Juniperfig and I will be your moderator this evening. Tonight's debate is brought to you by the Stock Exchange, Redmont's most advanced equity market. Start trading today. Over the next hour, the candidates standing before you will compete to lead the Commonwealth of Redmont. Our goal is simple: to give you, the voters, a clear and honest look at who each of the candidates are and what they stand for. Here's how tonight will work. Each candidate will deliver a 2-minute opening statement. We'll then move into our question rounds, covering the major themes facing Redmont today. Candidates will have 2 minutes to respond to each question, followed by a 30-second window for a single rebuttal. I'll be enforcing time strictly, so when your time is up, your time is up. We will close with 2-minute statements from each candidate. A few ground rules. The questions tonight come from submitted viewer questions and from our editorial team. Candidates are expected to answer the question asked. I reserve the right to interrupt for time and to issue live fact checks where claims are demonstrably false or misleading. Before we begin, we have a bit of a thank you to the supporters who made tonight's debate possible. You have my full permission to clip anything I say. Thank you to Betty91218, who writes, "Thanks for keeping such a high standard in every single article." Thank you to Julia MC, who writes, "Long live the revolution of the working class." Thank you to Floor is Tired, with a message to get out and vote. Hop to a poll and vote on that thing. 676767, meow. Thank you to Lawan Oseper. Shop at Lawan's graphic design, ads, logos, and more. Thank you to Muggy21. 6-7 yourself to the stock exchange to bet who will win on the next election. Thank you to Razo Bazo. Journalists stick together. Love from Raz TPA to TRT. Thank you to Superwhoops. Shout out to all Department of Justice employees for all their hard work. And at last, thank you to Pile of Corgis, who writes, "Never gonna give you up, never gonna let you down. My name is Juniperfig and you've just been rickrolled." We will get right into it. Each candidate now has 2 minutes for their opening statement. We will start with Dino, then move on to Doc, Multi, and last but not least, Talion.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Asexual Dinosaur. I'm here to represent the Asexual Dinosaur and RSP ticket, but notably, I'm also on the Juniperfig Dinosaur ticket. I'm also on the Floor is Tired Dinosaur ticket. I'm also on the Julia MC Dinosaur ticket. Thank you. For my Dinosaur RSP ticket, we will be representing the best of our nation, which of course is everybody. We want to make sure we're taxing banks on their deposits. I'm tired of having banks be taxed on their profits. It's ridiculous. One of my goals as president, we're going to be vetoing all legislation that Congress tries to pass. I need them to work together. I've been here for 2 years, folks. Nearly 2 years. I'm tired of Congress passing crappy laws that promises to do better in the future. Our bankruptcy law is a great example of that. We had a bankruptcy law from before. It was carried out. It was moved away when they moved into the LEA, and we were without a bankruptcy law for a few months, and this was due to Congress. They said they would pass a new one. They didn't. They reintroduced the old one, and today, I believe it's sitting on the president's desk. For a new bankruptcy law. It's been nearly a year. I seek to help the citizens of Redmont through and through. Not just with small changes, we need big, systematic changes. Thank you. That's my time.
Thank you so much, Asexual Dinosaur. Doc, you are up next. You have 2 minutes for your opening statement.
Sweet. So, Alright, sorry about that. Something popped up on Discord and got my attention. I am representing both End and Mine Discord. What the fuck? Hold on. Oh, I'm on technical difficulties. Give me a second.
Alrighty, thank you so much, Dr. Thunder, for your opening statement. We will now be moving on to Multiman 155. You have 2 minutes.
Hello, Redmont. I'm Multiman 155, and I'm running with Just Jada to be the next president of Redmont. This is about change. This election is about change. The server's gone through a lot of it. Over the past several weeks, we've seen a whole new group of people come in. These are people who, by and large, come from different backgrounds than those who joined in the year before. People who played SMP servers or were very involved in P2P, who want to play in-game, who focus more on playing in-game, more than playing on Discord. We have Minecrafters now, not just Discord crafters. So, I want to be here, and I want to make sure that we can incorporate real in-game analysis into our presidential ticket. I want to make the game experience good. I want to make sure that our first priority is to ensure that we can keep and include everybody, that we can reject corruption in our government, and that we can incorporate new players wherever we can to build our future and to give them a home. My experience is numerous. I've been Speaker of the House, I've been President of the Senate, I've been the Vice President, I've been the President, and I was a federal judge. My VP candidate, Just Jada, has previously been Deputy Speaker of the House. She's been a representative twice. She's been a medical specialist. She really cares about welcoming new players and education, one of my other passions. In this debate, you're going to hear some of our plans. You're going to hear some of the plans from my honorable opponents. And we hope today that we're going to convince you that we have the best plan, that we have the best experience, and that we have the character and judgment to lead Redmont going forward in the next 4 months. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your opening statement, Multi. And finally, Talion, you have the floor. You have 2 minutes for your opening statement.
Hi everyone. As you probably know, I am Talion, and I am running for president with my running mate Elisha Kryn. I am the incumbent president of the Senate, and my running mate is the incumbent Secretary of Commerce. As president, I want to be known as someone who drives change. Change for the new players that are coming to Redmont en masse. Change for the better of our nation. One of the most pressing issues facing our nation is the inequality between old and more established players and new players. This inequality is especially seen from an economic viewpoint. Prices have been going up radically since the beginning of the join wave. The biggest sinner in this regard is the real estate market. As plots are essentially unaffordable for any new player, we seek to fix this. We want change. To achieve more equality in the real estate market, we seek to establish auctions only new players may bid on. New players also commonly have difficulty starting out, as DC is such a complex environment. We should make the experience as pleasant as possible to ensure they want to stay here. For example, a lot of important information is hidden away on the wiki, when it could easily be made more accessible for new players at spawn or inside the tutorial. Once again, we need change. Furthermore, we believe that training procedures in many departments must be revamped. Many departmental training procedures consist purely of reading huge walls of text. This is not ideal. Vocational education is far better suited for training, as it is more tailorable to the individual, especially necessary in this environment, where all the players couldn't be more different. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for your opening statements. Now, the Reveille Times have graciously allowed me to ask each candidate a question individually. So we're going to start with my questions, and then we're going to move on to the audience questions. I'll read them out loud and also post them in chat. To start with, to Doc, voters don't seem to know you very well. Why are you running, and what do you bring to the table? Why should voters put aside their hesitations and vote for your campaign? You have 2 minutes.
All right, so that's understandable. Most people don't realize that or exactly who I am. I've been going for a little bit, but I decided to come back about 6 months ago. Some of my past experiences are I was a part of Congress, specifically the Senate. I did run for POS at one point. I wish I got it, but whatever. The other thing is I was one of the very first electoral officers and the Department of State Secretary. Prior to my experience on DC, there's a little known server that a lot of us came from in the past. I was Prime Minister and 8-term member of, what's that department called? Department of Commerce and Education. So I have some experience. What else can I say? And why should people vote for me? Oh, I got like a minute left. Sweet. Honestly, I'm just a chill dude, and I just go with the flow. I like to... What's the word I'm looking for? Sorry, I am multitasking here, so give me... I'm trying to go on. Why should people vote for me? Honestly, I'm just chill. And that's pretty much it. Sorry, I'm kind of got my time split. That's my time.
All right. Beautiful. Thank you so much for your response. We're going to move on to the question for Multi. Multi, you seem to have based a large part of your campaign on combating End. Many voters are concerned about potential toxicity from the latter. How can voters be sure that you will protect the dignity of the office and the political atmosphere, especially considering your spats with End in the past? You have 2 minutes.
I think evil needs to be called out. I think hate needs to be called out. I think corruption needs to be called out. The dignity of the office is that we have fidelity to the law and that we treat those with dignity at a basic level. That doesn't mean that we tolerate corruption, that we tolerate hatred, that we tolerate hubris, that we tolerate the sorts of things that have driven so many people off of the server because of End. That is his politics, that is how he runs government, that is his convictions in court, that is his censures from the Senate and the Congress. It is not just me who has seen this problem. We can't let it go unnoticed. But at the same time, I think what people have seen from me throughout the past several weeks is somebody who's been very willing to get down and help new players, to talk with them, to see what they want to do, to see what their dreams are, to see what their hopes are, to get them connected. And I've just been sitting in voice chats and talking with people. So this isn't a revenge campaign, although I am concerned for the soul of the nation if End were to win. This is a campaign where I think we can put forward a positive alternative vision, a vision of inclusion, a vision where we celebrate pride, a vision where every new player can feel at home here, where we can represent national holidays at spawn, especially non-Western ones that aren't often given. And so I think that that's the way I can do it. The dignity of the office is not to get into the spats necessarily below. I think the rest of civil society can handle End's toxicity at this point, and I think they're showing that. So I believe the dignity of the office is something that needs to call out the hatred and toxicity. But it's also something where I think I've shown it, and I think that people I've talked to know who I am. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Talion, we're going to move on to you. Your previous bid for presidency ended when now President Tech joined the race. At the time, some were concerned your campaign and potential presidency were dead in the water. How have the last 4 months since then changed your perspective and how you approach the job? Do you have what it takes to be president? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. At the time Tech stepped into the February 2025 race to run for president, I was indeed unprepared to run. That's no secret to anyone here. I believe that the 4 months that, as you mentioned, the 4 months that have happened since then have kind of shaped me as a player on DC. I have experienced many things here, including a much longer stay in Congress, in which I've had the pleasure to work together with many of the people we see in high office today. I yield the floor, thank you.
Thank you so much for your time, Talion. And finally, Asexual Dinosaur. People aren't convinced of the seriousness of your campaign, and you seem to play it as a joke. Do you have a serious message to give to your voters for your vision as president?
Two minutes. Thank you. Of course, I understand why this seems so unserious. We're not pandering to new players. We want to make sure we're taxing depositors, in the banks. That's such an out there idea. We want to veto all legislation to ensure Congress works together. That's obviously such an out there idea. It sounds so outlandish and wild, but to be honest, I think these outlandish and wild ideas are exactly what our nation needs to move forward. I mean, I think it is something one of the other candidates spoke on, actually, was giving new players a chance in the market by giving new player housing. I think this is the type of thing we should actually work against. I think new players should come into this server and focus on achieving rentals and have the goal of getting property. And I support them getting property, but the thing we should look at is supporting banks or having a state-sponsored bank that gives out loans to new players, right? We should really be playing into these aspects of the role play that our server is built around. So yeah, these ideas are outlandish. They're wild. They seem like they're a joke, but I'm ready to sit here seriously and veto all this fucking all of this legislation that's being passed through this Congress, because I demand they work together. I demand progress. I demand better for our people. That's my time.
Thank you so much for your response, Asexual Dinosaur. We will now move on to audience-submitted questions. You got through the Juniperfig gauntlet. Everybody's much nicer after me. So this order for answers is going to go Multi, Talion, Dino, and then Doc. You will each have 2 minutes as per usual, and I will remind you of the question at the start of your answer period. So Multi, you are up first. You have 2 minutes to answer this question. Do you perceive the recent wave and the new players that remain as an overall economic benefit or downside?
The obvious answer is that it's a benefit. Our economies had changed. We have different modes of production now. We have a lot of people who have come on and they're mining in the wild, and diamond prices have dropped, but iron prices have gone up. And so prices are kind of going all over the place at the moment. And that's fine. But we shouldn't be so short-sighted as to what we've achieved by having all these players online and by having all this enthusiasm. And that's a real economy in our game that's focused on doing things in our game. That means players looking for plots and actually renting, something that we haven't really had in a while. That means having a little bit of scarcity, which, while it's not very fun, is something you need for an economy. And that means also people creating tons of new businesses, having innovative pieces of software that are being put up, like your gnome stack or things like that, although he's a bit of an older player. So I think that this wave is bringing a lot of enthusiasm and energy and people, and that is what builds an economy. An economy is nothing without the participants, those who actually do the work. So it's good. Now, there's some challenges with it. I disagree with the Honorable King of Alexandria, a sexual dinosaur, that we should have people lording over the current stock and making it hard, or not building new stuff for new players. I think we need to expand the city. We used to have 30 to 50 people online at a given time. We now have 200. If that number settles around 150, that means the government has to do some work to zone out housing and commerce buildings for these people to actually use. And I'm going to do that. And while there's some challenges, I think, getting more players online, getting more activity, this is all, at a statistical level good for GDP, but at a more human level, it's a more social economy, and it's one that reflects, I think, our workers a lot better. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Multi, for your time. Talion, you are up next. You have 2 minutes.
I perceive the recent new player wave as a clear economic benefit. We've, as Multiman just mentioned, had so much innovation through this wave, and people being in game who actually participate in the economy. I believe that the short stain that has taken on our government with the starting balances is by far worth it in regards to the economic benefit and the innovation that these new players provide to us. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your response, Talion. Next up is going to be Asexual Dinosaur. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Honestly, I don't think I'm going to use the full 2 minutes for this. This is kind of a ridiculous question. Anybody who perceives the wave as a net negative or a downside, I think, is not being realistic about what we're actually doing here. We're playing a game. Players play the game. We want players to be here. Thank you. End of statement.
Thank you so much. And finally, Doc, here's your question. You have 2 minutes.
My bad. I'm going to keep it short like everybody else. It is amazing that we have this many players coming in. The fact that you can see people walking around the street all the time, buying stuff, starting new businesses. I have people renting my shops now, which are out in the more or less on the edges of the city. So the fact that those are getting rented out is amazing. I would say that this is a huge benefit to the server. So, and I'm trying to think of what else. Man, that's pretty much it. Everyone else said pretty much the same stuff I agree with, so I'm good.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. All right, we're going to go on to our next question. The order of answers this time is going to be Talion, Dino, Doc, and then Multi. The wave of new players has swept over the server, but the leadership and parties, Juniper fact check, this is not true, UJP, and government remains veteran players. How do you and your secretaries plan to integrate new players into the government? Talion, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. My government plans to incorporate these new players into our government by showing them the ropes. We wish to have them apply for department jobs, work their way up in departments. We have seen this in the past with the Trolligarch waves. Many of the current leaders in government, including myself, Multiman, and many others, are players of the Trolligarch wave. We've seen this in the past. These individuals are more than capable of working their way up the departmental ladder. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time, Talion. Next up is going to be Dino. That is the question. You have 2 minutes.
Okay. I think one of the things that the WPR really did right, I forget the exact name, but it was the 1,000 Flowers Project, the Million Flowers Project, where they really pushed for all these new players joining their party to get into government positions to apply out, and it really, I think that's something we should all learn from and push forward. New players are the foundation of what we do, right? They They bring money, they're transacting, they're working. We want them to be part of our government. We want them to be helping progress the things we do. And we want them to make parties. We want to hold up the UJP. And to be quite honest, in my presidency, I want one of my candidate picks to be, at least one of my candidate picks to be from that party. I want to make sure that new player voices are heard, and I want to give them the opportunity to lead and, pave the way for the progress that we really need and want within our area. We shouldn't be holding these players down simply because they're new. They need these positions, and we want to give them to them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Doc, you are up next. The question is in the chat, and you have 2 minutes.
So, I think it's already happening as we speak. New players are already getting into government, both in the Congress and government jobs. Part of the end in Doc administration is to make it easier for new players to get in, either by making sure that all playtime requirements are at most 24 hours, and also just cutting down the length of time it takes for applications, because sometimes, thanks to sometimes it just takes a little too long, and it discourages players when their application is sitting for multiple days. And honestly, I feel like that's a huge issue. And with having an active both president and vice president, along with an active cabinet, we can get more players, new players, inside government a lot faster. And I'll be honest, there's a huge need for police officers right now. The fact that most of them are getting denied is a little bit concerning. Though there are some joke applications in there, but I feel like we need to get more new players in. And I yield my time.
Thank you so much, Doc. We'll move on to Multi. Multi, the question is in the chat, and you have 2 minutes.
So I want to start off by addressing your fact check on the UJP. Something that we really wanted to do when we were building this campaign was make sure that we weren't just thinking about the new players in the abstract. We want to actively engage them. We talked a lot with the UJP, and we came up with a solution. And ultimately, they wound up choosing to endorse us, the United Jarenites. And that's this. We want to create an executive advisor position that we're going to give to a new player deliberately. I've seen what we were able to do with Vice President Skasani, who was elected in the New Alliance very shortly after she joined. So putting somebody who has that new player experience directly at the top and being a decision maker at a very high level is something that I think is both radical, but also refreshing. We need to give people a seat at the table, or we're just kind of lording over them. And a government shouldn't be a lord. A government should be a servant. At the same time, there's a lot of things that I think new players can do in our government already. Angry Hamdog has been very good at hiring detectives, and we're getting a few police recruits. But I think what we need is more police. More of those, very entry-level government jobs that people can get into. More police. Have them do beat patrols. I know a lot of the people in the Aventura docks would like to be police officers. They see what happens there. They want to deter crime. We should be able to make it happen, and I think under Vuda's leadership in the DHS, we'll be able to do it. But, the Multi-Man 155 Just Jada ticket is more than just about, abstract promises. We need to actually get out and teach people. It's something I have been doing in the legal field because I've seen that there's such a need to connect people and actually teach and talk to them and bring them in and get them excited. And if that's something that we can do, I think we can fill a lot of the slots that we've had in our government, particularly in places like the DOC that have had chronic staffing issues. So thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you so much. We will move on to our next question. This question will be answered in the order of, let me triple check, Dino, Doc, Multi, and then Talion. So our next question is, how do you think the recent wave of new players is affecting the job market? And what, if anything, will you do about it? Dino, you have 2 minutes.
The working class is going to, saturate the field of people who are willing to work. And I don't necessarily think that's bad. There's plenty of new lawyers coming in and seeking out jobs in legal fields, and there's plenty of miners and farmers and all that sort of good stuff. I think that we should we should promote these kinds of things. I think that having people in government is great. I think having people working in the private industry is better. if we can defer things from the government into the private industry because we actually have people willing to do the work, I think that's fantastic. I think we can incentivize a lot of these aspects in different ways. I think one of the things we really should do is bring Willow back as a town, and then we should put that little fucking, I keep cursing, that mining area up in the mountains that Winterwolf was always talking about. We really dropped off the field with that one, and we have all that farmland for farmers that we can be making use of. I think we can do a lot of better work for lumberjacks. And I think we can do better for our hunters. Anyway, let's kill new players. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Doc, it is your turn. The question is in the chat. You have 2 minutes.
Oh boy. So, let's see here. Let me read the question real quick because I was not paying attention. Okay. So let's see. The recent wave of new players has, I would say, been pretty hard on both veteran players and new players, just in general, trying to hire people, at least trust who to hire. And we need to incentivize the current business owners to hire new people. I've heard repeated claims from people that they will not hire new people because they do not believe that they're going to stick around, they're going to be trustworthy, which I think is just absolute bullshit. Dino, we're not killing new players, by the way. But I do feel like we should incentivize just companies hiring more people in general. And I feel like that would at least help a little bit. And then obviously just getting people in government jobs too, but that should be pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to yield my time.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Doc. Multi, you are up. The question's in the chat. You have 2 minutes.
I addressed part of this in my previous answer where I talked about teaching people how to do the jobs, especially the more complex ones like law. But I think we cannot leave out the private sector. I would take a different approach than vaguely encouraging businesses to hire new players. The government can wave its hands and it can say, hey, maybe we should do this, but you need either concrete incentives, which requires expenditures, which is very hard in the time of a budget crunch, or you need to come up with some actual solution. And something I've been doing throughout my campaign is, hey, you need a job, come into my Discord. I'll try to figure out a company that is hiring new players and will want to work with you. And I've been able to funnel a lot of people to jobs. All you need in life and here is a connection. So what does that actually translate to government side? That translates to either something in the DOC or the DOE coming together and saying, hey, we're going to look at businesses that currently exist. I want to look at businesses that really are hiring new players or hiring things new players can do. Resource gathering businesses, construction firms, things along those lines. And we want to be able to funnel people into the private jobs that exist. I think this is something, for example, Schwarz-Montaigne has done very well, right? You're a new player, you mine goods, you do something in the wild, you come back, you sell it to them, and they'll give you something at market price with a little bit of a markup because they're trying to essentially collect a lot of resources for some things like construction. Or we have Crazy Farmer Tommy, who will take farm goods. Or we have, the custom fishing guy, Larry the Fisher, in Aventura. So I think making sure that we're able to get people into these private businesses is something that's good. It's going to require a lot of human connections, and I think that means we're going to have to bring people into the DOE to get those and manage that. And also, going back to my answer for the previous question, making government jobs a little bit easier for people to get into. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Multi. Talion, you are up. The question is in the chat. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I do believe that the recent wave of new players will significantly improve the supply of employees in the private sector. In almost all of the companies I've worked at, we've always had, in all of the private sector companies I've worked at, we've always had chronic staffing issues. I believe and hope that this new player wave with the appropriate education of them, as per and for law firms, for stock exchanges, etc., will really help these businesses flourish and not be chronically understaffed for once. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. All right, on to our next question, which will be answered in order of Doc, Multi-Italian, and then Dino. On a scale from full town autonomy to towns are distractions from the point of the server, where do you stand? Doc, you have 2 minutes.
I knew this was going to come up. For the end and Doc administration, they'll have a full support. Now, granted, there's a little bit of a debate going on with uh, they're taking 100% claim of evictions, but we'll deal with that later. But we support towns fully on I can never say this word, but autonomy. Let me pull it up, back up my notes back up here real quick, because I have notes for everything. Where the hell they go? Here we go. Oh. What the fuck?
Alrighty, thank you so much, Doc. Multi, you are up next. The question is in the chat. You have 2 minutes starting now.
Thank you, Miss Fig. I am someone who would say near autonomy for towns. I am someone who, at the very foundational level, if you look through the history on legislation and how we eventually got to the current Town Rights Amendment, I was the first one putting things to the floor in the Congress. I was continuously pushing from it. I started my political career in Oak Ridge. I was Oak Ridge's town attorney general multiple times. I've been their head of residence. I am somebody who loves towns. I think towns are something that forms the soul of Redmont. You know, the city is something that's kind of amorphous. It doesn't really have an identity, but both of the towns do. And they're building, and they're doing really well for new players. But I think the current constitutional text doesn't go far enough. I think the towns aren't protected enough. I think that we need a more expansive one, such as the amendments that I proposed when I was in the Congress. And I do want to bring this up. Look, I believe, and when I was president, I did something that we created more local government opportunities. And that was this. I created the Willow Advisory Commission by executive order. I wound up putting into effect, moving on, and participating with, the previous president, who is the moderator here, something that got local governance finally back to Willow in some form. I don't think it's enough, though. So I think what we really should be considering is elevating Willow to the status of a town. We should be giving them real local government, not just this quasi-district status that they have. And I think it's something that at the end of the day, we have the player base for, in a way we didn't at the time that Willow was nuked by the Bezra administration. So I am very close to full autonomy for towns. I do think we need to enforce federal criminal code. I do think the Constitution should apply to towns. I do think the federal government should have certain roles in overseeing the towns and making investigations into corruption. But the town should be given a lot of flexibility to do what they need to do to execute their mission and to be consistent with their theme. Thank you.
Thank you, Multi. Italian, you are up. The question is in the chat. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. I would consider myself on the scale as about at the middle, perhaps a little leaning to full town autonomy. I have been engaged in the government of the town of Oak Ridge for a long time. I was their head of residence for 4 months, I believe. Thank you. While I was there as a resident, I have experienced what it meant, what it was like to lead a small community. The office of residence wasn't particularly big at the time. It was a really nice experience to get to lead such a small engaged community. I believe that we should that towns need to be able to do mostly their own thing. We should still have the constitution, of course, in towns. We should still have civil claims and criminal law done through the federal system. But I think that inside of the towns, most other things can be done by the local government. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dino, you are up next. The question is in the chat. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I mean, honestly, I respectfully, I don't really care what towns are doing. 6, 7. You know, they kind of just vibe and chill. I think they need some federal oversight, but I don't think we should be, you know, overseeing their evictions. I don't think we should be taking their money away from them. I don't think we should be forcing them to use our departments. You know, if they want their autonomy, they can have it. I genuinely don't care. They can do their own thing. I think if there's certain issues, I think the federal government should be able to step in and say, hey, this is constitutionally a problem. But, you know, outside of these very niche situations, I think they should be independent. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dino. We will move on to our next question. It'll be answered in the following order: Multi, Talion, Dino, and then Doc. The question is, how will your DHS combat the rising amount of murders? Multi, you have 2 minutes.
I think we need a radical revision of our policing systems in Redmont. We are currently on a model of policing that is reactive policing. A murder happens, a detective solves a case, it goes and gets solved, then we go out and we pluck the murderer, and we try to find them later. We rely on citizen reports, and sometimes the murderer is the one who reports the clues, and they break it and they throw it in different places. And that's just how our plugin works. We're kind of stuck with that, to a certain extent. But not to the extent that I think we've become accustomed to. I'm a police detective. I see when there are 7 pages of cases that we have to deal with. It's miserable. So how do we solve that? The solution to me is simple. We need to hire more cops and get them trained. But that's not enough if we don't change the model. We need to use these new cops to do beat patrols at high crime locations. That means posting cops at spawn and at the Aventura docks and treating it like we've done traditionally with security requests, that it's compensable payments, that we're giving them payment to be there, to watch, and then to quickly solve the cases and arrest people so that they don't murder the whole docks or they don't murder everybody at spawn. I think that, you know, you'll get something on the front end. At a certain level, you have to be reactive, but the extent where we're also going to change things is deterrence. If a criminal thinks there's going to be cops at a location, they might not go to that place. Or they might have to use invis, or they may have to be very hit and run. I think by having more police and having them actually be out on the streets in areas where they're paid to be, we can deter crime at locations where lots of players want to gather. And ultimately, that is how we can keep players safe. By taking our resources, by increasing our police force, and by focusing them on the areas where we're going to get the most reward. So we need to move to proactive policing in Redmont. Thank you.
Thank you, Multi. Talion, it is your turn. The question is in the chat. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I believe to combat the significantly rising amount of murders, we must increase the size of our police force. Not by a bit, not by a few, massively. We need to take advantage of the new player wave and get the new players trained up and engaged into government as police officers or where they are needed. I don't think I have much more to say to this, so thank you.
Thank you so much, Talion. Dino, you are up. The question is in the chat. You have 2 minutes.
you. Well, don't get me wrong. I do, in some essence, agree with my other candidates that it's good to have more cops. I think they help increase the roleplay. I think it helps with the criminal aspect as well. Running from cops is its own enjoyment. But insofar as addressing the murders, to be quite honest, I think murders are part of our daily life here in Redmont. And to some degree, I think we should acknowledge the lack of harm that is really associated with a murder. In Redmont, murder is little more than a petty crime. It's more like an assault. And I think, at bare minimum, we should let everybody have one daily murder. I think this will relieve a lot of the tension detectives are facing. I think this will prevent a lot of the strain the DHS is going to see. We're going to have people murder once a day, and then they'll get it out of their system. We'll all walk away happy. We're still going to have crime. We're still going to need cops. We're still going to need detectives. But the everybody gets one policy is something that I believe in. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. And Doc, you are last to answer the question. The question is in the chat. You have 2 minutes.
To take Doc's time, but he's not actually in the call with us.
Yeah, but I didn't have any plans for people dropping out of the call, so we'll sit here and think about what he could have said for 2 minutes. Alrighty, thank you so much, Doc, for your response. We'll go on to the next question. This question will be answered in the order of Talion, Dino, Doc, and then Multi. What is your plan for relations with Alexandria? Who did I say would go first? Talion, you are up. You have 2 minutes.
Oh, thank you. As someone who has been engaged in Alexandrian politics for a while, I believe that relations with Alexandria are very important to facilitate a kind of diplomacy roleplay between our two nations. I was the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Alexandria at one point, during which we hosted, I recall hosting a summit with then President Juniperfig to talk about issues of the embassy. I believe that we should continue our diplomatic relations and make sure our position is adequately represented. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Talion. Dino, you are up next. The question is in the chat. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. As many of you may know, as the King of Alexandria, sometimes the Queen, this is a very important issue to me. I think we, as Redmont, as the long-standing country, really need to put our foot down and demand a level of trade with Alexandria. We need to be importing their drills and their tractors as they're able to craft them. We should be able to get them at a cheaper rate. And if they will not work with us, I think the thing we need to go down is potentially bombing them. We should really raise them down to the ground on a structural level. Talking brick by brick. We could really go through and just steal all of those resources. We could steal their recipes. I wouldn't want a single person left over there. Of course, my preference is that we facilitate trade, but I don't think the president should be unwilling or afraid to step into the country and take it over. They are significantly smaller. They do not have guns. They have a king. I don't support kings. You know, so let's fuck up Alexandria if they won't work with us. Sorry, I cursed again. Let's mess up Alexandria if they won't work with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dino. In the interest of time, I am going to be skipping Doc's time, since he is not here to answer questions, but I fully invite Doc to answer them on his own time. So Multi, will go with you. The question is in the chat. You have 2 minutes.
I am open to trading with Alexandria. I think you can have international trade roleplay. If you look in around February of last year, I gave a whole number of suggestions for the international trade plugin that was, in development or in ideation at the time. The problem, in essence, is we have another server. We don't have a plugin to facilitate trade. So the actual tangible benefit of interacting with them has to follow some sort of technological development that's outside of the role of government. I'm not going to start making promises about future plugins. I don't think that that's something that I can do. What I can say is that if one is in development and if one is actually going to come to the government for advice on how it's implemented beforehand, yeah, I would want international trade. I would want some way to engage in tariffs. I would maybe want special goods on each side. I would maybe want some ability for people to get engaged even in international criminal roleplay, like trafficking certain medicines from Alexandria to Redmont, or certain buffs from Redmont to Alexandria, or vice versa. I think it could provide for something for both servers, and something like that would be fun. But until I see the technology, it's very hard for me to say, okay, there's actually a purpose to this other than LARP. And I don't mean that in a way that the server isn't kind of LARP, but I mean that in a way like there's no interaction other than one person has an embassy in the other at the moment. Sure, we can have events. We can have events in one of the worlds. We can have a war event. We had a war event during the PepeQ presidency. It was fun. But I just don't see a lot there, at least until we get the plugins. And, if they have a government and we want to recognize each other and we want to deal with international crime, I'm very open to working with them on that. And I tried to get negotiations with them until they kept stonewalling me, saying, oh, there's this judge that said we can't have elections. I think we need to wait for them to have a stable and effective government. I'm a little disappointed the OSR didn't get in and things along those lines. But ultimately, I think we need to wait for plugin development to seriously consider relations. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
To that.
Yes, absolutely. Dino, you have 30 seconds.
Yeah, thank you. I'm a little confused as to how we're lacking a plugin development here. The DCT has the ability to spawn items. The MOD has the ability to spawn items. We're not incapable of cutting items. We can implement this today. Yeah, a trade plugin would be ideal, but we don't need it. The technology is there, and I think the assertion that it isn't is ridiculous. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. We'll be moving on to the next question, which will be answered in order of Talion. Oh, wait, no, we already did that one. Dino, Doc, Multi, and then Talion. How will you address the high rent and raising inflation? Dino, you're up first. You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, actually, I mean, I don't think really high rent and rising inflation is a bad thing. I think it's a consequence of people having joined our nation. I think the rising prices of properties is beneficial. I think people having to take out loans for things is a good thing, like I've mentioned. We, new players, and all players, if you don't have the funds, should be seeking alternative means to gather these funds. The DOC offers grants. Private institutions offer loans. I think the state should be backing new player loans, or we should have a state banking facility to help issue loans. I don't necessarily think that the thing we're experiencing is necessarily bad. And I think the market is eventually going to correct itself over time. I think if we try and address a lot of these aspects immediately, we're going to end up biting ourselves in the booty in a negative fashion. And that's my response. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dino. We are going to skip Doc yet again, as he is not here. Multi, the question is in the chat. You have 2 minutes.
Something I'm thinking about in terms of the FRB and some other things is, we can play with monetary policy around high rents. We can play with monetary policy around loan interest. And we have these sort of tools that are reserved to an independent central bank. I don't think bringing the independent central bank and wringing it out of its independence would be good for our economy. I don't think that that's something we want to do. High rent is something that I'm seeing, and I'm seeing because people really want to rent close to the center of Swan. I want to expand the CBD. I do think that we need to expand the CBD to stretch from Swan to in front of the State Department building. I think that's going to take some things. It's going to take some time. It's going to take some negotiations. But I think those properties make excellent CBD plots, and maybe you can reserve some of them for new players or something along those lines to give them shop plots close to Spawn at a subsidized rate. At the same time, it seems like a lot of it's a communication issue, right? I went today. There's 80 pages of plots that you can rent for $50 or less for 30 days. So, the biggest combat to high rent is telling people and getting people connected with affordable housing. That's something the DOE has to do through its guides, teaching professors, whatever you want to call them in the next administration, that we have to do a better job of getting people connected with those cheap apartments. Because people are looking at apartments, they're not really sure how to search. The plugin is not very intuitive to somebody who's not a computer expert, right? You have to have double dashes, and you have to have words and then inputs. And I work in an office with people. If they're not from computing backgrounds, a lot of them have trouble with that. So we need to get people who are actually I don't want to say government realtors, but there's a room for realtors there to connect people with cheap housing that exists, and also for public housing that Aventura has been putting up with these rentals in towns and things along those lines to just make sure people can find the cheap housing that exists. Thank you.
Thank you, Multi. Talion, you're up. The question is in the chat. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I, for starters, do not believe that we have, at least in the residential sector, particularly high rents right now. We have many apartments that are available for cheap or even for free. So, we, as my predecessor said, we just need to, using the existing tools, I believe the Department of Education already has an apartment registry for this kind of stuff. We need to get landlords to register their apartment with the registry and to get new players to use that registry. I believe if we can effectively get the very cheap or free housing that already exists to new players, that is all we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Talion. We're going to move on to the next question. We'll answer it in order of Doc, Multi, Talion, and then Dino. But again, as Doc is not here, we'll skip right to Multi. So, Multi, will your administration's Department of Justice continue to prosecute towns for keeping all proceeds from auctions? The question is in the chat. You have 2 minutes.
No. I am of the firm opinion that the Department of Justice lacks standing to seek those suits. I do not understand why the Department of Justice, despite the Supreme Court's very explicit instructions on what an application of law means, thinks that they're able to get through Rule 2.1, which is to say that an application of law affects the government. The Commonwealth of Redmont is not directly harmed by the towns doing this. There is no basis there. The only basis understanding under Rule 2.1 then would go to application of law. The Supreme Court has made it very, 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 very narrow against Matthew 100X's, dissents, but it's made it very narrow. I just don't think the department has the authority. When we have disagreements with towns, there's two things we can do, right? We can talk with town leadership and see, okay, why is something going on this way? Or the Congress can handle it because the Congress has towns have to follow federal law. Those are the two pathways. Suing towns via the Department of Justice in order to effectuate legislative change in the towns is an abuse of discretion in my view. Now, I view supergroups in very high regards. I view Doge in very high regards. They've both done things like this. It boggles my mind as to why they're doing it. As a former judge, I think the cases have no basis. I think that the Congress is not authorizing this sort of behavior, and it won't be a priority for me, especially when there's a ginormous queue of tickets sitting in the DOJ at the moment. It's my understanding it's nearly 40 or 50 tickets. I think we should be focused on handling real criminals, going after people who are harming other players that are active, right? People who are scamming new players. We should be defending the Commonwealth and actually, using our DOJ to build up a stronger legal system. But I think taking random hotshots at towns for this particular issue doesn't make any sense because there's no basis in law for it, or at least no basis in law that allows the Commonwealth to sue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Multi. Talion, you are up. The question is in the chat, and you have 2 minutes.
No, I believe the government does not have standing for this kind of lawsuit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Talion. Dino, you are up. The question is in the chat. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. To be quite honest, I think Multi said it quite well. He is correct. This was something I had talked with a client about in terms of eviction auctions. I think there's maybe more of an argument if there was something in statute that the federal law applied. Frankly, eviction proceeds are a DCT policy. If towns were maybe chose to use the DCT, I could maybe see an argument. But if, frankly, towns, to my understanding, as I've reached out to them, are doing evictions on their own. They are reaching out to staff. They are doing their own evictions. They're not using the DCT. And that's what I've been told. And so insofar as that, I don't think the DOJ needs to be stepping in and taking their proceeds or saying what they have to do with those proceeds in any shape or form. If Congress wants to try and legislate around it, that's their prerogative. I don't think I would support it. But that's what we should see, is if we want that level of control, that should come from Congress, not the executive. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dino. We will move on to our next question, which will be, I think I'm right about this, I got a little lost, should be answered Talion, Dino, Multi. So, Talion, you'll be up first. Will you help new players, and how? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I believe we will need to help new players. For one, on a systematic basis, we need to make our training system, our systems and departments. We need to make all our systems more accessible for new players. We need to get new players into government. We need to get new players into Congress. We need to get new players into the law. This is simply something we cannot just throw away this wave. I also believe that, my Department of Education will also make sure that new players have an adequate time starting on DC. As I mentioned earlier, I believe much information is simply not accessible in a good manner. And as such, I seek to fix this. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Dino, you are up next. The question is in the chat. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I think we've kind of hashed over new players quite a bit over this debate. And I think they're a very important aspect of the server, but I don't think they're the only aspect. We should be helping new players. One of the things, again, and I'll say it again, I think we should be offering loans to new players, and I think we should be securing those loans from the state in order to help protect our institutions that are offering these loans. I think the best way to protect new players, is to give them the tools they need to help get set up. We want to, give them the connections for jobs. We want to hook them up into the government. We want to make sure they know about loans. We want to make sure they know about grants. Information is power, and really, this is an issue administration after administration. It will be an issue after this administration, no matter who it is. We need to make sure we're getting information into the right hands in an accessible format. This will always be an issue we face, and all we can ever do is try to do our best to make sure they have that information. And that's something I would like to focus on. I think that's something every administration to the end of time should focus on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dino. Okay, Multi, you are up. The question is in the chat. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I think the Honorable King Dino has put it quite well. We need to help new players, and the biggest thing that we can do to help new players is get them the information that they need to understand the server and to ultimately succeed. I've been sort of pioneering this myself by teaching these law lectures that I have every night at 9 p.m. Right, I've been going with new lawyers, I've been talking, I've been answering questions in chat, I've been doing audience participation. I think we need to be doing more of that. More of live talking with people, having people sit in VCs and let them come to us, answering questions from new players, helping them in-game, like, hey, I need help, I can't figure out how to get to a plot, what is the chat? You know, we have /ask. I talked about this earlier. Juniperfig did a great job on that. But what we really need, I think, human-to-human interaction. So that's how you help them get information. But helping them get information also requires us connecting them and bringing them into our social networks, bringing them into our business networks. Again, I think the plan I said earlier, bring new players and connect them with businesses that really like to work with new players. There's a lot of people who are very optimistic about this wave and are willing to hire new people, especially in the legal sector. There are firms out there. They're hard to find. There are firms out there that do it. And what I really think that we need to do at a fundamental level is readjust our expectation that everybody's going to have general knowledge of Redmont. And in our government, be willing to talk with people and not get mad and not get disappointed when somebody doesn't know something, but lend out a hand and lend out my, in a sense, lend out my heart to these people in order to make sure that we can bring them into a welcoming community. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. So we've already gone over time. I'm going to ask 2 final questions, and then we'll move on to closing statements. This next question will be answered in the order of Dino, Multi, and then Talion. Dino, the courts are flooded with lawsuits. How will your DOJ keep up with the increase in volume? How will you help the judiciary navigate this? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Honestly, I can't take credit for this idea, but I will try and push it. Something Small Fries has kind of stated is that we should really be drawing protections for the state to not have to deal with some of these administratively ridiculous cases, right? We're seeing cases, which I hate to say because I'm involved in one right now, but we're seeing cases with players getting murdered 1 to twice and trying to push a civil claim of harm. And it's not necessarily that they're without justification, but I think we could do better in trying to draw lines around these not being considered as seriously. I think the judiciary is doing good in a lot of aspects to dismiss these claims out of hand, as we've seen with Mug. But really, I think we should really draw better protections for these people in statute. We want to make sure that our courts aren't being used and flooded with these frivolous lawsuits that are frankly meaningless. This isn't really in relation to the DOJ so much as it is to the judiciary, because the DOJ isn't dealing with a lot of these claims. But in that same heart, some of these things that are being brought up against the Commonwealth, historically, there are some ridiculous cases that, again, the judiciary just doesn't really need to be hearing. There are some silly election-type cases. I recall Ignited TNT. That one, in my opinion, should have just been dismissed out of hand. It was a ridiculous claim. I can't do a whole lot on the executive level to help with these things, but it is my intent to use the executive to help push these types of legislation to help protect our courts and to help protect our DOJ. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dino, Multi, you are up. The question is in the chat. You have 2 minutes.
So there's 2 questions here. The first is on the DOJ, the second is on the judiciary. I do want to address first something that Dino said, the Ignited TNT case. The federal court actually found for the plaintiff in that case. The federal court did not find for the Commonwealth, so I think it's probably the wrong example to use. Something like Plura v. Air might be a better example to use, where the court doesn't need to deal with it, but they can kind of just dismiss most of those out of hands. The Supreme Court has already been narrowing standing. They've been making it harder to just kind of sue. I think you saw Amos Lapp suffer through this when he tried to sue over the alleged invalid signing of the treaty. So they're handling that in their respect, and I think we should maintain the independence of the courts in this regard. And I don't think what we should be doing is adding more immunity for the government. I think the government needs to be held accountable by the people. It's something I did when I was a lawyer, relentlessly pursuing the DCT when they unlawfully and corruptly evicted my client from their plots, and costing the Commonwealth $1 million as a result. And the Commonwealth the whole time was saying nothing was wrong. Nothing was wrong. We did everything legally, perfectly legally. But they were wrong, and it cost $1 million. So I think we need to really, we can't go toward that immunity pipeline. I don't think it's wise. It would be, nice for an administration to not have to deal with things, but we need the public control. I want to nominate more people to the judiciary. I think there's a lot of people who could go up to judge. I have talked with supergroups about this during my previous presidency. At the time, he said he wasn't ready, but I think he's probably ready now, or at least to push him to go to magistrate. Doge is a magistrate now. Alexandria has been made a magistrate here. Malcolm has been handling a lot of cases. There's some other people who I'd like to try to drag back into the legal field, like Juniperfig, as a magistrate or something along those lines to help with those, DCR cases. But that's all judiciary side. It's not something the president can do. As for the DOJ, I'm going to lend my hand personally. I was a power lawyer. I was a judge. I'm going to bring in some people who I think are really good, and I'm going to try to keep our structure intact while growing our base. I think I want to be able to have mock trials with public defenders. This way we can bring in junior prosecutors and have them prosecute in a baby case that's overseen by someone that doesn't have real stakes, but use these to build up experience and build up real sorts of legal knowledge and procedural expertise. Thank you.
Alrighty, thank you, Multi. Talion, you're up next. The question is in the chat. You have 2 minutes.
Oh, thank you. First, I'd like to second the statement made by my honorable opponent, Multiman. I believe that we must not increase the immunity of the government from claims. The government must be held accountable. I think he's already said most of the stuff in that regard, so I won't go more into depth on that avenue. But what I feel like we also need to do to prevent the courts being flooded with frivolous lawsuits is train up more lawyers. Again, I commend the efforts of my honorable opponent, Multiman, who has been holding public law lectures. We need more of this. There's currently a bill before the Congress to establish a Redmond Institute of Law. I believe this is a step in the right direction. We need to train up all the new people who are interested in the legal field adequately so that this is going to be reduced over time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Talion. All right, so for our final question before closing statements, it'll be answered in the order of Multi, Talion, and then Dino. So, Multi, many players have complained that the economy is too simplistic and there is very little to do or buy. Some have suggested resource sinks, capital-intensive industries, or quote-unquote Rust-like mechanics. What would you propose? You have 2 minutes, Multi.
I'm wondering if that came out of my campaign platform, because that's exactly what I'm suggesting. I think Rust-like mechanics would be very interesting. There are other servers I've played on where they've implemented this, and it has created a little bit more demand for raw resources. I think things like the iron sink, which is a bit of a pun in and of itself. It's literally an iron sink, but it takes an ungodly amount of iron to create, are testaments to the fact that we don't really have ways to eliminate resources in Redmont. And because the Nether and End respawn every so often, resources will continuously enter. And, Elytra breaks sometimes, and sometimes you get shot and your Elytra totally disappears, but they do increase over time in a stable way. What I think we ought to do really is have more capital-intensive industries. There has been discussion about electricity plug-in. The problem with me discussing basically anything on that is it's all speculative, and it's not really something the government can control. Rust-like mechanics might be something the government can control, right? The DCT can look at a plot and see what's in the plot, see what blocks are in the plot, and say, okay, you have 20,000 cobblestone on this plot because you made a really big cobblestone castle or whatever. And you're going to need to supply some fraction of that each month, or the DCT is going to send you a notice or something along those lines. I don't want to make Rust, though, an administrative bureaucratic burden. The more times I have to post on a forum or open a Discord ticket, the more times somebody who's in good faith, willing to comply, accidentally screws up and then gets screwed by it. So, I would like to increase item sinks. I think the FRB has some plans to reduce the spawning of items. Something you could do is require the government or require pasters to tender items if they're pasting from the build world. So this way you don't spawn in coral and things like that. But a lot of that's already been patched because of the top 14 plus expensive blocks rule. So I want more item sinks, but it's going to take a plugin change to get there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Multi. Talion, you are up next. The question is in the chat. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I do believe that we need more item sinks in Redmond. Our current economy is very much succeed once and then never worry about money, resources, upkeep ever again. I believe that we need to change this. We need some way of continuously getting rid of items, whether that is through the government having to maintain upkeep on its buildings, whether that is through increased costs through DCT paste will have to be explored, but I firmly believe that we do need item sinks. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Talion. Dino, you are up next. The question is in the chat. You have 2 minutes.
I gotta say, I'm a little confused. The Multi's persistent belief that the plug-in mechanics just aren't there. Again, the DCT has the ability to cut items out of the world. They could just be doing this at any time. They could do this today. They could have done it yesterday. We could be just removing items point blank. And in fact, we still actually kind of do have an item sink today. The Vault plugin allows us to remove items from players who no longer own the plot. If those players are no longer in the server, those items aren't in the server. We've effectively removed them. Yes, in the same degree that the starting balance money can be returned through prunes, they can return and bring those items back. But not all players come back, and as such, all those items also do not come back. But if we wanted to implement a more proactive approach to this kind of thing, for one, there's a lot to address here. For one, I don't think the paste costs are any form of actual sinkage. They're still blocks. They're still getting pasted in. They're still being moved in. I think if we wanted to address something like this, we could facilitate trade with Alexandria, take tariffs, and then we could even potentially take these tariffs and just nuke the tariffs straight out of the server while accepting the raw goods themselves. That way we at least encapsulate some sort of sink. There's a lot of ways into which we could just be deleting items straight out of the server if we really wanted. But ultimately, I don't think there is a problem. I don't think there's a need. If we want to integrate more intensive recipes, I don't think that's a bad thing. But ultimately, we do have sinks, and we can implement these sinks throughout new types of methods. Multi has a rebuttal.
Yeah, absolutely. Multi, you have 30 seconds.
Yeah, thank you. I do want to address the question of the DCT just being able to randomly cut things out. Again, I don't think it's a good idea structurally for random, building inspectors to go in and say, you didn't give us your, 20, your 200 cobblestone blocks this month, let's cut things out. I think it makes for bad experience. And ultimately, you have lots of ways to do item sinks hacky, but it doesn't provide for a good UX, and I don't think it's a wise idea to implement without plugin change. Thank you.
Respectfully, I didn't say randomly.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for your responses. We're going to move on to closing statements now. You will each have 2 minutes. We're going to start with Talion. We'll move on to Dino, and then Multi will close us out. So, Talion, your closing statement, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you to everyone who has attended the debate tonight. It was really a pleasure to me. I believe I should be elected because, at least in my opinion, our campaign has the best outlook for Redmond and the most suitable experience to fit that specific outlook. As I look at all of you, the audience, the other candidates, I only realize more and more why this election is so important for us to all succeed, regardless of the winner. Thank you for having us. We will be aligning the stars for you.
All right, thank you so much, Talion. Dino, we'll move on to your closing statement. You have 2 minutes.
I appreciate everyone showing up today. I appreciate the comments from Multiman to reject corruption. I think we need more of it. Let's tax depositors. Let's give out loans to new players. Let's protect those loans because they're high risk. Let's veto legislation from Congress. Shout out to Vague Boy. I think the people deserve a president willing to commit to their goals, willing to do what needs to be done, willing to not pander to the new player population, yet still willing to work with them. Want our new players to enjoy the server we play on, and I think part of that is giving out loans and not new player housing. I think our new players should demand progress, demand change, demand a difference. And I demand a vote for Asexual Dinosaur. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dino. We'll move on to Multi. For your closing statement, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you all for coming to the debate. You've heard a few different visions for Redmont today, and I'm proud to say, and stand behind, our vision of change. Our vision of change is one where we embrace the fact, fundamentally, that 3/4 of our active player base has joined in the past 2 weeks. We are not the same country with the same people as we were before. And while we need to integrate people in, we need to welcome these new immigrants. That is not an excuse for failing to address their material conditions. You know, there's material conditions of old players, I think Dino alluded to it. And there's material conditions of new players, which I've heard a lot about, which I've talked with the UJP's leadership about, which I'm sure if you've seen me in voice chats, you've probably talked with about them. How do I get a passport? How do I get a job? How do I get housing? We need to make government approachable. We need to make government different. I'm not going to make a government that's full of the sorts of people who like to discuss 1960s economic policy in Portugal as the main thing on this server. I want to have a government of by and for people who play in the game. I think that's where our server's headed. I think that's where our base is. And I think that's why we have the vision. I'm qualified. I've been the president before. I've served honorably even while I had very tough things going on in my personal life. I've been the VP. I've been the president of the Senate. I've been the Speaker of the House. I've been a federal judge. I know how our government works at every level, and I know how to use it to make our country better and to make our country one that people will want to stay in, that people will want to play in, and that people will enjoy. Change gonna come. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much to all of our candidates for participating in this little debate gauntlet. Your answers were fantastic, and I'm so honored to have gotten to ask the questions to you. Thank you to the audience for tuning in. One last thing, we had a last-minute supporter statement come in. So from Inza, woof woof, only real bitches shop at George, /GPS George. It's going to be all from me. Thank you so much again. Have a lovely night, and good luck to all of the candidates on the election. This has been Juniperfig moderating the TRT presidential debate. Good night.